So this season, Bungie have substantially reworked a couple of exotics, and I wanted to see how good they are. So I went into PvE, specifically the whatever it's called Nightfall. Jesus Christ, my brain just collapsed. On Legend difficulty, and I tested them all out. So here are my results, starting with the first one, that being Wish Ender. Wish Ender got added intrinsic anti-barrier. It can also sometimes hit targets more times, up to 3, and also it does 10% more damage versus champions and mages, and my bad, how could I forget? It has an 8-second millisecond draw decrease time. Moving on. Personally, the most easily seen thing is the single target damage of this thing has increased so much. It's actually really incredible. This weapon is being slept on very, very easily. Like, this thing does a very large chunk of damage to champions. You don't really get that in primaries. But yeah, it does a really good amount of damage. And then also on top of that, because of added anti-barrier, this weapon has become even more viable in higher end content, and quite substantially viable at that as well. Seriously, this thing is genuinely being slept on. Like, the damage you can do with a single shot of this thing is just so good. In terms of legend content as well, it can one-shot an anti-barrier shield, which is really nice, but I'm not too sure about Master, and obviously I can't test Grandmaster yet. I will show that in editing, hopefully. But yeah, overall, this change is incredible, with the most strongest change obviously being the 8 millisecond difference. God damn, that's so insane. No, I'm just kidding. There is one gripe I have about this weapon, and it's actually just about bows in general. The really long draw time frames and the very short draw time frames feel very difficult to see when you fully charge the bow, so I wish it was just a bit more snappy. That is literally it though. This weapon is very good now. Moving on. Now we have Lord of Wolves. Lord of Wolves got its starting ammo reduced in PvP from 15 to 10. Again, PvE unchanged. Its burst times, while Release the Wolves is active, it's been decreased from 10 to 5, but as compensation, the burst delay, or the time between shots, has been decreased by 60% while Release the Wolves is active. Basically, it went from long burst with long cooldown to short burst with very short cooldown, so minigun. It also got its damage decreased by 20%, but in PvE increased by 20% to compensate. This weapon can have really good DPS, kind of, while Release the Wolves is active. It really quite is a minigun. But biggest goddamn problem with this weapon, this thing will not hit any target, and it's not because my aim is bad, but that is a valid point. It's mainly because someone put like a magnet on the end of this thing but accidentally put it the wrong way around, so every time you shoot the thing, it goes in every other direction other than the place you're aiming at. Seriously, even while ADSing, you could not hit a boss with this thing. That seriously needs to be helped. I understand it's a balancing thing for PvP, but like, if you're sacrificing the PvE this much for PvP, it's like, oh boy. And also, another thing, a gripe I have about this, is it doesn't feel exotic. It feels like the weapon is trying to be the Fifth Horseman. It feels like it's trying to go too much into just pure DPS than anything else. I feel like it would be better if this weapon went into ad clear a lot more than pure DPS, but who knows. Overall, this change is not actually bad. I guess I forgot to mention the main changing point of the thing itself. I guess in PvE, it doesn't really feel very different, but the whole minigun form of the Release of Wolves is very fun to play around with, I can't lie about that. Overall, I'd say it's maybe a good change, maybe a bad change, it's kind of neutral. Moving on. We now have Dead Man's Tale, which got actually just kind of a net bonus, to be honest. Firstly, Cranial Spike no longer damage buffs versus players. Instead, it grants increased reload speed, which it did before, aim assist, which it did before, and range. And of course, it still grants increased damage versus PvE combatants, so literally a net positive. Also, instead of its hipfire catalyst increasing the RPM naturally, it now only increases the RPM when you're at ×5 cranial spikes, but it will increase it by 50 instead of 20, taking it to a 180 RPM. And as a trade-off, its damage per bullet is decreased by 20%. This is a very interesting change, to be honest. I can't say it's good, and I can't say it's bad. The hipfire increase from the ×5 cranial spikes is quite incredible, to be honest. Like, this thing really turns into a minigun, Lord of Wolves style, I guess you could say. And it's very fun. But the main problem is that you chew through all of your bullets within about 0.3 seconds, and then from that you have to rely on reload speed, obviously. which is non-existent. Even with a reload mod, the reload speed on this thing just doesn't exist, and that is, I think, literally the only thing this goddamn gun needs. It needs just more reload speed. That is my basically only gripe about the weapon. I think everything else is a net positive. Moving on. And now we have probably the biggest change of all, Collective Obligation, which is the raid exotic from Vow the Disciple. This got very good changes. Firstly, Void Leech timer has been increased to 15 seconds instead of 10 in PvE activities. Also, the Void Leech cooldown is completely gone, thank god. It gets a 20% damage buff while Void Leech is active in PvE. It takes less hits to fully charge Void Leech, and also killing a debuffed target just instantly charges Void Leech. As well as being debuffed will also instantly charge Void Leech, but you can't apply it on yourself. This weapon has just gotten better. There is no single thing that got worse about this weapon. Quite literally, statistically, and in-game. The Void Leech timer itself is a great addition. Like, the extra time is just super nice. One gripe though, it is hard to tell if Void Leech is actually active because the animation that normally plays is built around the 10-second duration, not the 15, meaning it disappears at about the 8-second mark. So for the rest of those 7 seconds of Void Leech, you have just no idea if it's active. You can obviously look at the left of the screen, but that is way too much effort for me, come on. And then probably the biggest change, the removal of the cooldown is really powerful. With suppression and weakness and then sometimes volatile, you can actually kind of have them just be infinite. If you're theoretically just killing an ad that can't die and you're continuously applying all these 3 debuffs, as soon as your Void Leech timer ends, you can obviously just re-grab them. Since suppression and weaken have a long duration and can't disappear, you will basically always re-grab them. But then volatile, sometimes you might not have applied volatile, and sometimes it might explode before you can actually grab it. But overall, that is just huge. Having just an infinite debuff on a target is so good, especially suppression. It is very strong. But just normal ad clay, especially if you manage to bind it with volatile, like, holy shit, you could demolish them shit. Considering everything's suppressed and can't even see you, I mean, like, god damn. And then also, being able to kill debuff targets and instantly get the Void Leech is also great and very much helps for ad clay. However, I do have a couple gripes about this weapon in general. Not really to do with the change, but just kind of to do with the weapon. Firstly, the weapon feels very weak single target wise. It just doesn't do a lot of damage. One way of changing that is increasing the damage bonus, if it's even there, let's be real. And then another way we could do it, which in my personal opinion is the better way, is by increasing the rate of fire while you have the Void Leech active. Maybe not by much, but just by something. That's kind of biased by me though, I just want to shoot the gun faster, but yeah. And then also another gripe, this weapon becomes substantially better when you're on Titan than anything else. I playtested this thing on both Hunter and Titan, and it was by far much more incredible on Titan. On Hunter, I tried to do a build with the new chest piece, the one that gives you a 35% damage buff when you come out of invis, and pairing that with Stylus Executioner, which makes you go invisible when you kill a debuff target. You can see where that goes. But it just ended up not being anywhere near good as Titan. And the reason being is because Titan can inflict all 3 debuffs with 1 grenade. Suppression with Suppression Grenade, Weaken with the Fragment, and then Volatile using the Aspect. Controlled Demolition, which applies volatile on ability damage. But yeah, just being able to apply all 3 of them in an instant and then grabbing them is just so much stronger. Volatile especially. Just not being able to get volatile with this weapon is the main thing that makes it worse than other characters. Other than that though, this gun is so good, and I actually think it could become much better the more people you have with it. That is it for all of the reworks. Overall, we've had a lot of positive things, but some things have been a bit more neutral. And then also there's Wish Ender, which is still, goddamn, this thing is really good. You really have to use it in high-end content, like goddamn. But yeah, that's about it. See ya.